The Terran Empire's Awakening. The Praean battlecruiser shuddered as it broke orbit, its crew fleeing in abject terror from the human colony world below. Lieutenant Thomas Jackson watched on the viewscreen, his heart pounding as the massive alien warship jumped to hyperspace. It was clear that the Praean crew had been driven to madness by whatever had taken hold of the humans on the planet. The nightmare had begun. 80 years earlier, the Terran Empire had designated XR-33 for colonization, drawn by its mineral wealth and strategic location. But the planet's intense radiation and hostile native life had quickly turned it into a death trap. The half-built colony had been abandoned, left to the smugglers and desperate fools who dared to eke out a living on the forsaken world. Now something unimaginable had occurred. Energy readings unlike anything Jackson had ever seen emanated from the heart of the abandoned colony. The source was a strange artifact sealed within an alien vault, pulsing with raw, unearthly power. The protocol was clear: investigate and report. Jackson gathered his security team, the finest the Empire had to offer, and they advanced with weapons at the ready. The air hung heavy with the taste of ozone and an overwhelming sense of dread. Time was running out. Beyond XR-33, the Praean armada waited in the void, poised to strike at the heart of humanity. The Terran fleet, unaware of the impending doom, mustered to meet them. The voice of Jackson's captain crackled over his comlink from the orbiting TSS Indomitable. Code Black, all units returned to. The transmission dissolved into static as a searing light erupted from the alien device, bathing Jackson and his team in its glare. Every cell in Jackson's body seemed to drink in the strange energy, remaking him into something more than human. When the light faded, Jackson found himself reborn. The universe spun out before him in a transcendent vision. He saw the Terran ships high above, poised on the brink of destruction. He saw the Praean fleet, hungry for blood, and he knew what must be done. Humanity's survival now lay in the hands of Jackson and his transformed team, the only ones who could wield the power to turn the cosmos itself against their enemies. Lost in time, Jackson groaned as he pushed himself up from the floor, his head pounding like a drum. Blinking a few times to clear the spots from his vision, he saw his squad sprawled around him. Their armor was scuffed, but miraculously, they were all unharmed. Sergeant Hawken was the first to speak, rubbing his temples. What the hell happened? Jackson shook his head, trying to make sense of it all. I don't know. That artifact, where is it? They searched the vault but found no trace of the strange device or the energy readings that had drawn them there. It was as if it had never existed. When they emerged from the alien structure, they froze in their tracks. The derelict colony they had entered hours ago was gone, replaced by gleaming buildings and bustling streets. Ships streaked across the sky, landing and taking off from a massive spaceport in the distance. There was no sign of decay or abandonment. "This isn't possible," Corporal Chen whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. Jackson hurried over to a nearby public news feed, his heart racing. The date displayed made his blood run cold. June 15th, 2244, exactly 80 years in the past, the day before the Terran Empire had abandoned XR-33. "Sir, our comlinks are dead," Private Sensen reported, tapping at his helmet. "All our tech is fried." Jackson took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. "We need to blend in, keep a low profile until we figure this out. Let's head to the spaceport and see if we can find some answers." They made their way through the crowds, trying not to draw attention. Jackson concocted a cover story, telling curious colonists that they were new arrivals waiting for permanent quarters to be assigned. At the spaceport, they found a quiet corner to regroup. As they discussed their next move, Jackson overheard two freighter pilots chatting at a nearby table. "Did you hear about the latest Praean attack?" one asked, sipping a steaming mug of coffee. The other nodded grimly. "Third one this month. They're getting bolder, pressing closer to our borders." Jackson's stomach twisted into knots. The Prion War was still 80 years in the future for these people, but he had seen firsthand the devastation it would bring. Now, they were stranded in the past, with no way home, while the enemy grew stronger by the day. He signaled for his squad to follow him, heading for the temporary lodging area. As they walked, a thought nagged at the back of his mind. What if this wasn't an accident? What if that artifact had sent them here for a reason? Could they change the past, stop the war before it began? The fate of the Terran Empire, of all humanity, might just rest in their hands. Unraveling the mystery, Jackson sank onto the lumpy mattress in the cramped apartment, his mind racing. The rest of his squad busied themselves, taking inventory of their meager supplies. They had enough rations for a week, maybe 2 if they stretched them. But after that, Corporal Chen voiced the question on everyone's mind. "What are we going to do, sir?" Jackson rubbed his chin, feeling the stubble that had grown during their journey through time. "We can't risk changing the past. The consequences could be catastrophic. But we need to find out what happened to this colony in our timeline. Why was it abandoned?" A suspicion had taken root in Jackson's mind the moment they arrived. "I think the Prions were involved somehow. It's too much of a coincidence that they're already attacking our borders." Sergeant Hawkins frowned. "But how do we investigate without drawing attention to ourselves? We can't exactly flash our Terran Empire IDs." "I'll go alone," Jackson said, standing and grabbing his jacket. "You all stay here and maintain our cover. If anyone asks, I'm out looking for work." Slipping out of the apartment, Jackson made his way into the bustling streets of the colony. The air was filled with the hum of activity, the shouts of vendors hawking their wares, the laughter of children playing. It was hard to believe that in their timeline, this place was nothing but a ghost town. Jackson approached a group of colonists chatting near a food stand, trying to look casual. "Excuse me," he said, flashing a friendly smile. "I'm new here. What's the word on the colony's future? Is it looking good?" Most of the colonists nodded enthusiastically, gushing about the rich mineral deposits and the Empire's plans for expansion. But one man, a grizzled miner with a scar across his cheek, pulled Jackson aside. "You want the truth?" he asked in a low voice. "I've heard things, rumors mostly, but from people I trust." Jackson leaned in, his heart pounding. "What kind of rumors?" The miner glanced around nervously before continuing. "They say the Prions have a new weapon, something that can make a whole planet uninhabitable, like what happened on Telos Prime." Jackson's blood ran cold. He had heard of Telos Prime, a once thriving colony world reduced to a barren wasteland by a mysterious Prion attack. But that was years from now, in their timeline. "There's more," the miner continued, his voice dropping even lower. "A buddy of mine works at the spaceport. He intercepted a coded Prion transmission a few days ago. They mentioned XR-33 by name, said it was the perfect test site for their new weapon." Jackson's mind reeled. If the Prions were planning to attack the colony, that would explain why it was abandoned in their timeline. But how could they stop it without changing history? He opened his mouth to press for more details, but the miner suddenly clammed up. "I've said too much already," he muttered, backing away. "Forget you heard any of this." Before Jackson could stop him, the man disappeared into the crowd. Cursing under his breath, Jackson knew he needed more information. He turned and headed for the spaceport, determined to find answers. But as he walked, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Glancing over his shoulder, he scanned the faces in the crowd, but there was no one there. Little did he know, a figure lurked in the shadows, their eyes trained on his every move. They had seen the way Jackson questioned the colonists, the intensity in his gaze, and they knew with cold certainty that he was not what he seemed. The figure slipped away, melting into the throng of people. They had a report to make and a plan to set in motion. Jackson and his squad had no idea what they had stumbled into, or the danger that now followed their every step.